Great. So now, welcome everybody. Can everybody see me? Just give me a heads up. Yeah, I can hear myself on my phone also. So this is just about MCQs, and we will try to cover a very important concept today in today's session, that is enzyme kinetics. So for anyone who is trying to, who's attending my session for the first time, or I'm Dr. Abhishek, your mentor for biochemistry at Unacademy. And at Unacademy, I take biochemistry plus a lot of mentoring sessions. If you are new to this Unacademy channel, make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell icon, because not only me, all the different educators, whenever we get time, we take free classes on YouTube. Most of these free classes are basically on the high topics, so that and latest questions, clinical questions, image based questions, so that you can keep getting a practice of what kind of questions you can expect in the examination. Now, this is something new which I have started. Many students, want my notes or want replay of the videos. So what you can do is you can go to this URL bit.ly Dr. Abhishek 10. Okay, Dr. Abhishek 10 is my also on Academy code. So you can just fill in your email ID. So whenever I have a class, you will automatically be emailed about my class, and whatever notes will be of that class, whatever concept cards will be of that class, that we will automatically be mailed to you. So you don't have to worry. Even in later date when you want, you just put the topic name in your email search and you will get that topic. So today's topic is enzyme kinetics. Hi, good afternoon, Kameshwar. Good afternoon, Nandini, Rahul. Good afternoon, Sandeep. So there are few announcements from Unacademy 8. One, we have launched a raise a hand feature on an Unacademy Plus platform. There are two clinical integrated batch which we have started on Unacademy, and they are primarily keeping in mind the latest pattern of exam questions which are there. There's also a high revision batch which just started for NEET PG students, and then there is a target next batch and FMJE batch for your FMG and next students. Now remember, any exam you are planning, we have a specific batch for it, so that you don't have to plan. You just join a batch and complete it. Okay. So now coming to today's session. So first of all, the very important thing is that how do you plot substrate enzyme interaction? Okay. So how do you plot substrate enzyme interaction? So what you do is, on the x-axis, this is your x-axis, okay, you take the substrate concentration. Okay, you take the substrate concentration. Substrate concentration is how much the substrate is there. It is typically taken in moles. Okay, moles, 1 mole, 2 mole, 5 mole. What is the amount of the substrate which is there? And then on the y-axis, you take the rate of the reaction. You take the rate of the reaction. So what is the rate of the reaction? Rate of the reaction is nothing but how much substrate is being converted into the product per unit of time. How much substrate? So basically, how much product is formed, how much substrate is converted into product, okay, in a unit time, let's say in a second or in a minute, whatever that may be. So this is the rate of the reaction. So these are the two things which we plot. And then what we see is, at different substrate levels, the rate of the reaction keeps on changing. Okay, so we plot a curve of the different substrates. Sorry, there was a power cut. So, and this is the kind of curve we get. So this is how, first of all, this is a very basic concept you have to understand, that this is how we plot the rate of the reaction and the substrate. Okay, so this is what a kind of curve we get. This is a simple substrate versus velocity curve. And what is the what is the curve name? This is basically a hyperbolic curve. Hyperbolic curve means, initially, as we increase the rate, substrate, the rate of the reaction increases very rapidly. Okay, but after some time, if you see beyond this point, if you can see in this, as you increase the substrate concentration, the increase in the rate of the reaction slows down, and beyond this point, probably, even if you increase the substrate concentration, there is no change in the rate of the reaction. No change in the rate of the reaction. So are you clear what kind of curve we get? Is everybody clear what kind of curve we get? Basically, as we keep increasing the rate, substrate concentration, the rate of the reaction increases, and then the increase in the rate of the reaction decreases, and eventually, after a point, no matter how much substrate we are putting, the rate of the reaction stops increasing. So this is the kind of curve which we get for most of the enzymes, and this is basically called as a hyperbolic curve. This is called as an hyperbolic curve. Now imagine there can be certain enzymes, and this is the most common curve. Remember, all enzymes will not show the same curve. There can be an enzyme where the rate of the reaction does not depend upon the substrate concentration. So the rate of the reaction is fixed, and even no matter how much substrate concentration you are increasing, the rate of the reaction does not change. So these are called as zero order kinetics. Very rare, but this is it. And every enzyme will show zero order kinetics at higher level of substrate concentration. Is it clear to all of you? So this is the kind of curve which we get. This is called as an hyperbolic curve. However, this is the most common curve. But allosteric enzymes, what are allosteric enzymes? Allosteric enzymes are, these are enzymes. What happens? This is your allosteric site and this is your active site. So these enzymes have an allosteric site where an activator or an inhibitor will bind here, and they will change the configuration of your active site. So these allosteric enzymes, they do not show this hyperbolic curve. This hyperbolic curve is not shown by allosteric enzyme. They show a sigmoid curve. Sigmoid curve. So if you can see what is the difference. So first, as we increase the substrate concentration, the rate of the reaction increases slowly, and then it increases rapidly. So it is a lag phase, a log phase, and then a plateau or a stationary phase. Okay, plateau or a stationary phase. So these are two different enzymes. Okay, allosteric enzymes and all the other enzymes. Most of the enzyme will show a hyperbolic curve, whereas allosteric enzyme will show a sigmoid curve. So this is a very, very important point. The next important point about enzyme kinetics which you have to know is basically what is the significance. So how do we know, what is the affinity of the enzyme towards the substrate? So how good is the interaction between the enzyme and the substrate? And for that we need to calculate a parameter called as Km. Okay, so what is Km? Km, to calculate Km, first you take the Vmax, you get half Vmax, and look at the substrate concentration at half Vmax. So that is the Km. So Km is nothing but the substrate concentration at half the Vmax. Okay, what is the substrate concentration which is required for the enzyme to reach the half Vmax velocity? So this is substrate concentration. And very important points about Km value or this constant is number one, it is inversely proportional to affinity, which means higher affinity will mean lower Km. Higher affinity will mean lower Km. Similarly, lower affinity will mean higher Km. Is this clear, all of you? Will mean higher Km. Another very important point about this Km is it is dependent on the enzyme substrate pair. It is constant for an enzyme substrate pair, and also it is very, very very significant for that enzyme substrate pair. It is constant for that enzyme substrate pair. So as long as the enzyme substrate pair remains the same, the Km value will remain the same if you have no inhibitor or we have no activator. Is this clear, all of you? Is this clear of what is a Km value? Next, so once we have understood Km value, so once again, how do you calculate Km? Km is very simple to calculate. First, you take the Vmax and you get the half Vmax, and then you plot this half Vmax. Wherever it cuts, just drop to the substrate concentration, and there is your Km value. Okay. Now, having said that, so this was when we were plotting plotting velocity by substrate. We have to now, there is another kind of curve which we draw, and that is called as double reciprocal plot. What is a double reciprocal plot? In that case, we do not draw V by S, but we draw 1 by V by 1 by S. So we have reversed both the x-axis as well as y-axis. In that case, we get two very, very important points. One is this point. This point is called as y-intercept. Why y-intercept? Because the value of y is 0 here, and this point is called as x-intercept. Why x-intercept? Because the value of x is 0 here. Now this y-intercept depends upon Vmax, and it is inversely proportional to the Vmax, which means if the Vmax is coming down, y-intercept will go up. Similarly, x-intercept is basically inversely proportional to the km. So if km is going up, then the x-intercept will be, decreasing. And remember, this is a minus sign, but what we are talking about is the absolute value. Okay, I'll show you certain examples. So is everybody clear about, double reciprocal plot? So in double reciprocal plot, only two things you have to remember. One is this y-intercept, and y-intercept, remember, is 1 by Vmax. And next is this x-intercept. X-intercept is 1 by km with a minus sign. Okay, so again, km is inversely proportional to x, but the absolute value. So let's look at some of these, double reciprocal plot which you have been asked in the examination. So here you see the Vmax is remaining the same for these two curves when the inhibitor is added and absent. Okay, but when you see, so Vmax is same. So remember a very, very important concept. Whenever Vmax remains same, we are talking about a reversible inhibition. Is this clear? So whatever this inhibition is, it is a reversible inhibition because Vmax is same. Now let's look at the Km value. So we see that the Km value is basically decreasing. The Km value is decreasing, so the affinity, 1 by Km is coming on this side. So definitely the affinity will be, 1 by Km is decreasing. Okay, x-intercept is increasing, so Km should increase. In this case, if you see, the x-intercept is increasing. It has moved from this point to this. So basically the Km should increase or the affinity should decrease. Affinity of the enzyme towards the substrate is decreasing. So this is a classical case of competitive inhibition. Is this clear? In competitive inhibitor, you remember that y-intercept will not change, whereas 1 by Km, the x-intercept will move in this direction. Is this clear? Because what is going to happen to the Km value? The Km will increase, so 1 by Km will decrease, so it will move towards this direction. Suppose this is 5, this is 4, so it is decreasing, moving towards this direction. Is it clear, everybody? Okay. Next is basically in this curve, if you see. Here, if you see, the Km is not changing. Okay. The Km is not changing because x-intercept is not changing. But 1 by Vmax is actually increasing. So Vmax has to decrease. Vmax is decreasing because 1 by Vmax, suppose this is 4 and this is 5. So now 1 by Vmax has increased, the y-intercept has increased. So Vmax has to come down. So Vmax is coming down. This is a classical case of, any irreversible inhibition. Any irreversible inhibition will be, Vmax will be coming down. So this is seen in non-competitive inhibition. We know that in non-competitive inhibition, the Km remains same. Whereas Vmax